My own daughter raised her glass, looked straight at me, and sneered, "Don't eat too much, Mom. You already look like a fat pig." Everyone laughed. The sound of their laughter sliced through me sharper than any knife. Crystal glasses clinked. Music played softly in the background, and yet in that moment, all I heard was the echo of her voice, my own child, humiliating me in front of a room full of strangers. The hall shimmered with golden lights, every table draped in white silk, roses standing tall in crystal vases. Waiters in black suits glided across the polished floor with trays of champagne. My daughter's engagement party looked like something out of a magazine, and I stood there in my simple navy dress, the one I had carefully ironed that morning, thinking it would be enough. But under their gaze, I felt like a beggar who had wandered into a palace. I forced a small smile, trying to hide the sting in my chest. I had come here for her, for my daughter. I wanted nothing more than to stand proudly as her mother, to see her happy, to celebrate this milestone. Instead, I had become her joke. I heard the whispers ripple through the crowd. "She really is big, isn't she?" a woman muttered behind me. "Why would she wear something so plain? Doesn't she know tonight is about appearances?" Another snickered. I lowered my head, pretending to adjust my purse strap, pretending not to hear. But every word landed heavy, piling onto the weight my daughter had already placed on me. When I finally lifted my eyes, I saw her standing arm in arm with her fiancé. Her face glowed with charm as she entertained his wealthy family. To them, she was the perfect hostess, elegant, witty, flawless. And to them, I was invisible, or worse, an embarrassment she needed to erase. She caught my gaze across the room. For a split second, I thought I saw regret. But no, her lips curled into a smile that wasn't warm at all. It was a warning. Don't ruin this for me. I took a step toward the buffet, hoping to disappear into the crowd. But before I could move, her voice rang out again. "Careful, Mom," she called, her tone dripping with mockery. "If you eat too much, we won't be able to roll you out of here." A burst of laughter followed. Guests covered their mouths, pretending to be polite, but their shoulders shook. Even her fiancé chuckled, though he quickly looked away. I felt my face burn. My hands trembled, and for a moment, I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. My daughter, the little girl I had once carried on my hip, the teenager I had stayed up nights worrying about, the woman I thought would always need me, was parading me like a clown for her new family's approval. I lifted my chin. My voice came out softer than I intended, but steady. "I'll try not to shame you more than I already have." A hush fell over the nearest tables. Some guests glanced at me with pity. Others smirked, enjoying the show. My daughter's jaw tightened, and she quickly raised her glass again, steering the attention back to herself. "Let's toast," she declared. "To new beginnings, to family, and to success." Everyone clapped. Glasses lifted high, and in that flurry of sound, I shrank back into my chair, wishing I could vanish. Yet as the champagne sparkled under the lights, I noticed one pair of eyes that didn't look away. The fiancé's father. He sat with his shoulders straight, his expression unreadable, but his gaze fixed firmly on me. Unlike the others, he wasn't laughing. He wasn't whispering. He was studying me. I shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to meet his stare, but when I finally dared, he gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging something no one else in the room could see. For the rest of the evening, I stayed quiet. I moved carefully, speaking to no one, keeping my hands folded in my lap. My heart ached with every smile my daughter gave to everyone but me. Still, I refused to walk out. Leaving would have been surrender, and I couldn't give her the satisfaction. When the music softened and another toast began, I reached for my glass with trembling fingers. That's when he leaned slightly toward me, his voice low, carrying only to my ears. "Strange," he said, studying me with a look that pierced right through my shame. "You look familiar to me. Where have I seen you before?" His words froze me in place, and for the first time that night, the laughter around me faded. His eyes stayed on me, sharper than the champagne bubbles in his glass. I tried to pretend I didn't notice, but every time I glanced toward the head table, the fiancé's father was already watching me. His stare wasn't mocking like the others. It was thoughtful, assessing, like a man connecting dots in his head. The dance floor glowed beneath soft lights. Couples swayed to the rhythm of a slow song, their laughter floating above the music. The clinking of forks against plates, the polite conversations, the bursts of cheer, it all blended into one shimmering picture of wealth and belonging. But not for me. I stood at the edge of it all, feeling like a shadow, a guest who wasn't really welcome, an intruder in my own daughter's life. I wanted to slip out, disappear before another insult could find its way to me. My plan was simple. Wait for the next round of applause, walk out quietly, call a taxi, and leave this humiliation behind. But as I turned toward the exit, a hand stopped me. "Excuse me," the voice said. I froze. It was him, the father-in-law. His tone wasn't mocking, but it carried weight. The kind of weight that made you turn and listen whether you wanted to or not. You remind me of someone," he said, narrowing his eyes. "Do you have family and business?" "Your last name. It rings a bell." Before I could answer, my daughter swept in like a storm. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor, her smile tight, her eyes burning with warning. "She doesn't matter," my daughter said quickly, grabbing his arm. "Don't worry about her. She's just irrelevant." The word hit me harder than her earlier insults. Irrelevant. As if I were nothing more than an extra body taking up space in her perfect evening. I tried to step back, to shrink away, but the father-in-law didn't release his gaze. His eyes softened, almost kind, and he murmured just loud enough for me to hear, "No one with those eyes is irrelevant." My breath caught. For a moment, I forgot the sting of the word irrelevant. For a moment, I almost believed him, but my daughter tightened her grip on his sleeve. "Please don't listen," she hissed. She's not important." Her voice cracked on the last word, desperation creeping in. The father-in-law's brow furrowed. "Strange way to speak about your own mother," he said. The table behind us went silent for a beat, ears suddenly sharper than they had been a moment ago. My daughter flushed crimson, pulling him away with nervous laughter. "Let's not make a scene," she whispered through clenched teeth. I stood frozen, the sting of her words mixing with something new. Suspicion. She wasn't just embarrassed by me. She was actively erasing me, pretending I didn't exist, pretending her life had been built without me. It wasn't just the insults. It was as though she wanted me gone from her story entirely. I excused myself, muttering something about the restroom. The moment I shut the bathroom door behind me, I collapsed against the marble sink. The silence wrapped around me, and for the first time that night, I let the tears fall. The woman in the mirror looked broken. Red eyes, trembling lips, a dress that suddenly seemed too plain. Too cheap for this place. I pressed my palms to the counter, whispering, "Why, daughter? Why am I never enough for you?" I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed to run, to hide from this cruelty. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, rose inside me. Stay and see this through." I washed my face, fixed my lipstick, and forced my back straight. When I walked out, the party looked different. The laughter no longer sounded like joy. It sounded hollow, brittle, like something ready to crack. I returned to my table quietly. My daughter avoided looking at me, keeping her smile plastered on for her fiancé's mother, talking about designer gowns and honeymoon plans. She didn't want me there. She wanted me invisible. But I refused to vanish. Later, when another toast was raised, I felt a brush against my hand under the table. I looked down and saw a small white card being slid discreetly toward me. The father-in-law's business card. His voice carried across the clink of glasses, low and deliberate, though no one else seemed to hear. "Call me tomorrow," he said, his eyes locking with mine. "We should talk." My heart thudded hard against my ribs. What could he possibly want with me? The business card burned in my pocket like a secret flame. All through the night I turned it over and over in my hand, as if the small rectangle of paper carried more weight than the glittering chandeliers from the party. By morning, I had barely slept. My apartment felt even smaller after the grandeur of last night. The modest kitchen table wobbled when I set down my coffee. My toast tasted flat. The walls seemed closer, almost mocking me. Last night I had walked through gold and silk. This morning I sat surrounded by peeling paint and silence. I kept touching the card, his name embossed in dark ink, a number that waited for me to dial. But what if I called and he laughed? What if he only wanted gossip, to humiliate me the way my daughter had? Or worse, what if he exposed truths I had worked so carefully to bury? Because the truth was, I wasn't who everyone thought I was, not even my own daughter. I closed my eyes, letting memory pull me back. There was a time, years ago, when I didn't live in this modest apartment. I lived in a house with tall windows and a driveway big enough for 3 cars. I ran a business alongside my late husband, an empire of construction and logistics. We built, we expanded, we thrived. Money wasn't just comfortable, it was abundant. When he died, I was shattered. And when I remarried briefly, my daughter and I drifted. She resented my choices. And when that marriage ended too, I made another choice. I hid what I had left. Quietly, carefully, I moved assets into trusts. Properties, stocks, accounts, all sealed away. I let the world think I had fallen. I let my daughter think I was broke, and she believed it. Completely. She never asked, never looked deeper. She was too busy chasing her own image of success, too busy clawing for approval from anyone richer, shinier, louder than me. I whispered to myself as I stared at the card. If she only knew. But she didn't. Not then. I turned the card over one last time, the edge digging into my palm. My hand shook as I reached for my phone. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the numbers. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. Finally, I dialed. The line rang once, twice. Then his voice answered, calm, steady, and sure. "This is Richard." My throat went dry. "This is her mother," I managed. There was a pause, but not of confusion. Recognition. "Ah," he said slowly. "I wondered if you'd call." "I almost didn't," I admitted, my voice small. "Fear," he said softly. "It keeps most people silent, but not you. I think I know who you are." His tone made my skin prickle. Warm but shrewd, like a man who saw more than he let on. "You don't know me," I whispered. He chuckled, not unkindly. "Oh, I think I do. Years ago, I crossed paths with a woman who built something impressive, a company with reach far beyond her neighborhood. She had fire in her eyes." My chest tightened. "That was once, and it still is," he replied firmly. "Don't tell me you've let it all go." I swallowed hard. My fear wanted me to lie, to keep the mask on, but something inside cracked open instead. "I built things once," I said carefully, "and I never really stopped." The silence on the line wasn't empty. It was heavy with understanding. "I knew it," he murmured. "Your daughter parades herself as if she's the pinnacle of ambition, but she doesn't realize she's been standing in the shadow of someone greater all along." My grip tightened around the phone. His words pierced me, but not painfully. They stirred something I thought I had buried. Pride. Still, doubt lingered. "Why are you telling me this?" "What do you want?" His voice lowered. "Because truth has a way of surfacing, and because I believe dignity belongs with those who've earned it, not those who trample it." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. For so long, I had let shame dictate my silence. For so long, I had played the role of the poor, invisible mother. But maybe I wasn't invisible. Not to everyone. And then his voice sharpened, cutting clean through my hesitation. "If your daughter knew what you truly own," he said, his words deliberate and slow, "she'd beg for forgiveness. But maybe she doesn't deserve the chance." My breath caught, and in that moment I realized the secret flame in my pocket wasn't his card. It was me. He invited me to dinner, but it wasn't really about food. The restaurant gleamed like a jewel box, its chandeliers dripping light across white tablecloths and crystal glasses. A pianist in the corner played something soft, something that felt almost conspiratorial. This time, I hadn't arrived like a ghost on the edges of other people's laughter. I had chosen my armor carefully. A tailored navy dress, my hair pinned neatly, a pair of earrings I hadn't worn in years, catching the light with every turn of my head. I walked in not as someone's discarded mother, but as a woman who once built things that lasted. He was already waiting, seated near the window. Richard rose when he saw me, a small but deliberate courtesy. His eyes tracked me with the same sharpness I had noticed at the party. Only now, that sharpness felt less like scrutiny and more like recognition. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "Let's see if I'll thank you later," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. The waiter poured wine, the kind that shimmered with ruby depth. I lifted the glass but didn't drink yet. This wasn't about wine. This wasn't even about dinner. This was about intent. "So," I began, leaning back, "why the invitation? Curiosity? Entertainment?" His gaze didn't waver. "Respect." I gave a small laugh, though without humor. "That's a word my daughter has never associated with me. She doesn't understand value," he said flatly. "But I do." The words landed heavy between us, and I studied him for a moment. His tone was calm, but underneath it ran steel. "Is that why you pressed me to call? To remind me I'm not invisible?" I asked. "To remind you of what you still are," he corrected. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "You own controlling shares in a company my associates still whisper about. Don't pretend you don't know." My breath caught, though I didn't let it show fully. "And what if I do?" His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Then you are far more dangerous than your daughter realizes. Dangerous." The word curled inside me, unsettling and thrilling at once, but suspicion still lingered. "And what would you gain, Richard, from telling me this?" His fingers tapped lightly on the table, once, twice before he answered. "I gain nothing, but I despise cruelty. The way your daughter treats you, it reeks of arrogance built on ignorance. I have no patience for that." The The waiter appeared with plates of delicate food, perfectly arranged, far too pretty to eat. I barely glanced at it. The real feast was in his words, and in the way they seemed to cut open truths I had long hidden. "Suppose I believe you," I said carefully. "Suppose I accept that you see me differently. What then?" "Then," he said slowly, "we wait." "Wait?" "Yes." He sipped his wine, eyes never leaving mine. "Do not reveal yourself yet. Let them continue believing the story they've written about you. Because soon, at the next gathering, the next test, their true colors will bleed through, and when they do, you'll be ready." I tilted my head, measuring him. "So you're asking me to play along, to let my daughter keep erasing me?" He shook his head. "Not erased, observed. Let her write you off as irrelevant while you stand taller than she imagines. Power is not in shouting who you are. It's in choosing when to show it." His words struck something deep. For years, I had lived in the shadows of my own choice, telling myself it was protection. Maybe it was. But sitting here now, across from this man who seemed to see everything, it felt less like hiding and more like strategy. "Your daughter doesn't understand value," he repeated quietly. "But I do, and so do you." I set my fork down, leaning forward. My reflection caught in the polished silverware. Steady, calm, no longer trembling. "Then let's see how long she can pretend," I said. For the first time, his smile reached his eyes. It wasn't the smile of an ally or a savior. It was the smile of a co-conspirator. The pianist's melody shifted. A subtle rise, as though even the music sensed the change in me. I had arrived wary, certain this dinner might be a trap. But now I saw it clearly. It wasn't a trap for me. It was a trap for them, and I was no longer the one being baited. Richard lifted his glass, tilting it slightly toward me. "At the next family gathering," he promised, voice low, deliberate, "we'll see their true colors. I'll make sure of it." The wine tasted richer then, sharper, almost electric. The crystal clink echoed like a starting bell. This dinner wasn't about food. It was about war, and I had just agreed to fight. The next gathering came faster than I expected. Another party, another chance to be humiliated. This time it was a family brunch at the fiancé's estate, sunlight spilling through tall windows onto a table long enough to seat 20. Chandeliers glittered overhead, crystal catching the morning light, and the air smelled faintly of roses and buttered bread. I entered quietly, shoulders squared, my dress simple but dignified. Around me, laughter bubbled. Champagne was already being poured, though it wasn't yet noon. My daughter sat at the far end, posture perfect, smile sharper than the knives laid beside each plate. She spotted me instantly, her lips curving into something cruel. "Well," she said loudly, drawing eyes down the table, "you made it. I wasn't sure if you'd find anything decent to wear." A ripple of chuckles followed, shallow and cruel. Even her fiancé smirked, his arm draped lazily across the back of his chair. Heat prickled at my skin, but I said nothing. Richard's words echoed in my head. "Power is not in shouting who you are. It's in choosing when to show it." So I sat, silent, watching. The brunch unfolded in glossy layers, waiters carrying silver trays, glasses refilled before they were half empty. Conversation swirled around me, but every so often my daughter would drop another barb, each one meant to slice away at my dignity. "Careful with that glass, Mother," she sneered once. "It's crystal, more expensive than anything you've ever owned." Her fiancé chuckled. A few guests leaned closer, entertained. I gripped my napkin tightly, holding my silence. The trap wasn't ready yet. Then, at the height of her performance, Richard cleared his throat. His voice was calm but carried like a bell. "Do you even know who you're speaking to?" he asked, eyes locked on my daughter. The room stilled. Forks clinked softly onto plates. My daughter blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" He reached into his jacket and laid a folder on the table. The sound of it landing against the wood was louder than any insult she'd ever thrown at me. "Here," he said, sliding it forward, "is proof, holdings, trusts, controlling shares. The woman you dismiss so easily happens to own more than most of this table combined." Gasps rippled through the guests. Glasses were set down hastily. Heads turned, eyes widening. I saw my daughter's face drain of color, then flush red. She stammered, No, that can't. Mother, you never told me." My pulse surged. For the first time in years, I stood tall, my voice carrying across the glittering room with authority I thought I had lost. "You never asked," I said. "You only insulted." Silence fell heavy. Even the piano player in the corner had stopped. My daughter's fiancé leaned back, his smirk gone, replaced with something colder. His family, seated nearby, exchanged tight looks. their polished smiles vanishing. Richard's hand rested lightly on the folder as though sealing the truth in place. "We value integrity in this family," he said deliberately, "and arrogance without knowledge has no place at this table." My daughter's lips trembled, her perfect composure crumbling. "I didn't know," she whispered, almost pleading. "I didn't," but the room no longer belonged to her. It belonged to me. I lifted my chin. "You never cared to know. You cared only for appearances, for status you thought I couldn't provide. But wealth isn't just what glitters in front of you. It's what endures behind closed doors." Her fiancé's mother placed her napkin down neatly, her eyes like ice. "Richard," she said evenly, "perhaps this marriage is premature." Richard nodded once, his gaze sweeping the table. "This marriage," he declared, voice calm but final, "is no longer certain." The words dropped like a stone into water, sending shock through every face present. I looked at my daughter then, her mask shattered, her confidence stripped bare, and for the first time, it was she who sat small and silent. While I stood in the light, the trap had sprung, and it had not caught me. She fell to her knees right there, begging me not to ruin her life. The brunch had broken apart into fragments, guests whispering, silver cutlery abandoned, the fiancé's family retreating into stiff corners of the estate. But in the garden beyond the tall glass doors, it was just us, my daughter on the cold stone path, her dress pooling around her like a wilted flower. The roses behind her looked brighter than ever, their beauty mocking the rawness of her tears. My hands trembled, but not from weakness this time, from the sheer weight of what she was asking of me. "Please," she sobbed, clutching at the hem of my skirt. "Mother, you can't let them leave me. You can't destroy everything I've worked for." I looked down at her, my only child, the girl I once cradled through fevers and heartbreaks. But the woman kneeling before me now wasn't that girl. She was a stranger who had made me feel invisible for years. "You think I ruined this?" My voice came out steady, colder than I expected. Her head snapped up, eyes wild with desperation. I didn't mean what I said. "All those times, I was stupid, jealous. You called me irrelevant," I cut in sharply. "You treated me like dead weight." Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered through her tears, "Because I thought money was the only thing that mattered, and I thought you had none." The confession twisted something in me, both wound and weapon. She hadn't despised me for who I was. She had despised me for what she thought I lacked. And in that moment I knew the truth. Her cruelty had never been about me at all. It had been about her hunger for wealth, her obsession with appearances, her terror of being ordinary. Behind me, Richard's footsteps sounded softly on the stone. He didn't speak, but when I turned slightly, his eyes met mine, calm, steady, an anchor. He was giving me space to decide, but his presence reminded me I no longer had to stand alone. My daughter grabbed my hands, pressing them to her damp cheeks. "Please, I'll change. I'll treat you with respect. Just don't take this from me. Don't ruin the wedding." Tears stung my own eyes, but I blinked them back. For years I had longed to hear her say those words, but hearing them now I realized they weren't for me. They were for her survival. "Respect isn't bought," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. "It's earned, and you lost it." Her grip faltered. She stared at me as though I had struck her. For so long I had wanted to be needed, to be loved even in scraps. But standing here I understood. Love that comes only when I hold the purse strings isn't love at all. I pulled my hands free. "I will not fund this wedding, and I will not sit quietly while you insult me again." "Those days are over." She shook her head violently, panic flooding her features. No, you don't mean that. You can't just abandon me now." "I'm not abandoning you," I said, softer but firm. "You abandoned me years ago when you decided my worth was measured only in dollars. You erased me. You forgot I was the one who raised you." The garden seemed to hold its breath. Even the birds in the trees were silent. Richard stepped closer then, his voice calm but absolute. "She has spoken, and it's final." My daughter looked between us, at the man who now held the authority she craved, and at me, the mother she had dismissed. For once she seemed small, fragile, powerless in her own grand world. I took one last look at her, my child, my betrayer, my blood. My heart ached, but my spine held straight. "Maybe one day you'll understand," I said quietly. "But today is not that day." Then I turned my back on her. Her sobs rose behind me, desperate and breaking, but I didn't stop. My heels clicked against the stone as I walked away, each step heavier than the last, and yet somehow lighter too. I didn't know if our relationship could ever be saved. Maybe it was already too late. But for the first time in years, I wasn't begging for her love. I was demanding my dignity, and I would never let it be erased again. The silence of my home felt like peace, not loneliness. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of quiet. My elegant but modest home office was bathed in soft morning light, the curtains stirring gently in the breeze. The desk before me was neatly stacked with papers, contracts, trust reports, company updates. Orderly, solid, mine. No champagne laughter mocking me. No sharp eyes waiting to cut me down. Just the hum of the city outside and the steady beat of my own heart. I sank into the leather chair, letting the calm soak into my bones. A strange ache lingered, a shadow of my daughter's sobs in the garden. Was I too harsh? Had I gone too far? But then I remembered her words. Dead weight. Irrelevant. Years of being erased, belittled, dismissed. Respect had been a one-way street, until I finally built the barricade. The phone rang, slicing the silence. For a moment I hesitated, half expecting another plea, but the voice that greeted me was steadier. "Good morning," Richard said. His tone carried warmth, but also something rarer. Respect. "I wanted to thank you for standing tall." I exhaled slowly, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "Thank me. I nearly tore your family apart." "No," he corrected. "You revealed the truth. Families that can't withstand truth aren't worth keeping intact. You did what had to be done." His words lifted something heavy from me. Not all men sought to use to diminish. Some understood dignity when they saw it. "Then perhaps I should thank you," I said, "for seeing me when no one else did." "Not just seeing," he replied. "Respecting, that's rarer than gold." The line lingered quiet for a beat, heavy with unspoken things. Then he said, "You have a friend in me now, if you ever need one." After we hung up, I sat with the silence again. This time it didn't ache. It soothed. My phone buzzed on the desk, message after message lighting up the screen. From my daughter. "Mom, please answer. I didn't mean it. We can fix this. Just help me." The words blurred together, a tangle of desperation. But my hand stayed still. I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, I turned back to the paperwork. The company reports stared up at me like old companions. For years, I had hidden this part of myself, afraid of casting shadows on my daughter's ambition, afraid of stirring resentment. But hiding had only made me small in her eyes. Now, the numbers, the signatures, the decisions, they weren't just business. They were reminders. Proof that I had survived, endured, built, and held on. Proof that I was more than what anyone called me. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. In the quiet, I whispered to myself, "I am not a fat pig. I am the woman who survived it all." The words steadied me like an oath, carving deep into the silence until they no longer felt like defiance but like truth. The ache of my daughter's betrayal would never vanish completely. Blood does not lose its sting so easily. But I had finally chosen the one treasure that could not be stolen, mocked, or dismissed. Not her approval. Not her forgiveness. My dignity. I straightened the stack of papers, placed my pen neatly on top, and rose from the chair. The house was still quiet, but now it pulsed with certainty. Family should have been my treasure. Instead, dignity is, and it will never be taken from me again. Family should have been my treasure. Instead, dignity is, and it will never be taken from me again. If you believe self-respect is more valuable than money, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.